Hi, my name is Sebastian Witowski, and I would like to talk about Advent of Code. If you don't know what's Advent of Code, it's a set of puzzles released every year in December. So every day you get a new puzzle, and for example, here is the first one from last year, there's some background story, and there is a task. So you have a list of numbers, and two of them sums up to 2020. So you have to find those two numbers, multiply them together, and return the product as the final answer. Of course, here we have only like 6 numbers, but your actual puzzle input will be much larger. So while you don't have to use a programming language, solving those puzzles on a piece of paper is not the best idea. So if you decide to use a programming language like Python, then using Jupyter Notebooks is a great idea because you can import your input and incrementally work on your final solution. So if you decide to use Jupyter Notebook, there are a few cool tricks that can help you. For example, if you want to get the documentation of some function, you can Google for it, but you don't actually have to leave the Jupyter. You can just append ? And this will give you this nice pop-up with the documentation. So here I get the documentation for ReModule. Here I get it just for the match function. And it also works for third-party libraries like for NumPy. And if you don't know how some function is called, you can just append an asterisk and a ? To perform a wildcard search. So here I'm getting the list of all the functions from ReModule that starts with find. Although here I could just press tab and I could get the auto-completion. But for example, maybe you just know a part of a function. Like I know that the OS module has a function to create directories, but I don't know how it's called. Is it makedir? Is it mkdir? Who knows? Well, I can run this piece of code, and this will give me the list of all the functions that contains dir. So that's pretty handy. By the way, did you notice that I was running code from the ReModule, but I never actually imported it? Well, that's because you can execute some code at startup. There is a folder for IPython where you can put some Python files, and when you start Jupyter Notebook or IPython in your terminal, this code will be automatically executed. So we could go to terminal and see what's inside my startup directory, but we can also execute some code, some shell commands directly in Jupyter. So we just have to prepend those commands with the ! So here I can list the content of my startup folder, and I can see what's inside the aoc.py file. So you can see I'm importing RE, NumPy, and pandas, and I have my own custom function to read the input files. We could even append something to that file by executing the echo command and passing it inside my file. And here I can add the import OS module at the end of it. Although using Jupyter to modify shell files, it's not the best idea. And sometimes you might have some data that you want to save and restore it when you close the Jupyter Notebook session. For example, for Advent of Code, it could be the input data, which is usually not a big deal. But if you're a data scientist and you work with large data set, it might happen that you spend a whole day cleaning some data set, and then you close your Jupyter Notebook and the next day you want to continue. But well, to get back to the state where you left it, you would have to rerun all the commands that you did, and maybe there are some exceptions, so you have to comment them out, and that's a hassle. Also, it might happen that the input data is not available because you were loading it from an external server and now the server is gone. Luckily, Jupyter has a way to store and restore variables in its internal database. So let me show you an example. Here I read the input for the day 1. It's a list of strings. And I can store it with the store magic command. I can list all the stored variables. So I have the day 1 that I just stored and day 2 that I stored some other day. I can restore it. And now I have the variable called day 2. And if you want to list all your variables that you have defined in Jupyter, there are some Python commands that you can use, like dir. But Jupyter has a lot of internal variables, so that's not very useful. There's also globals and locals. And they are even less useful because now you see the content of our huge lists, so that's really hard to use, and the same problem with locals. Luckily, Jupyter has two functions, who and whose, and they will both print you the list of variables or functions that you have created or modules that you have imported. So here we have day 1, day 2, and the module OS that I imported. And I like to use whose because it gives me this nice table with the type of a variable and what's inside. And sometimes you run some code and an exception happens, and now you wish you would run this code with a debugger because now you have to put some breakpoints and rerun it. Well, you can actually use a post-mortem debugger by running the debug magic command. And this will let you debug the last exception that happened. So here we have the Unicode decode error, and here I'm in the stack trace. I can see the content of my data. No, get back here. As you can see, data is in a binary format, so now I know what happened. And don't forget to continue to get out of this cell. And if you want to automatically start the debugger when the exception happens, you can enable it by running the pdb magic command. So now we can try to read the same data again, and again we have the exception, but this time the debugger was automatically started. We can see data is still in a binary format. We'll have to fix it one day. And we can disable the debugger by running the pdb command again. And if you want to share your code with someone, you could download this notebook and send it to them, or just copy the code by hand, but you can also create a Pastebin. So here I'm creating a Pastebin of commands 1 to 10, 12, 14 to 16. And I can send this URL to someone and they will be able to just take our code and copy it to their code editor. Okay, and I know that I didn't speak much about the advent of code directly. I spoke mostly about Jupyter. So here's a bonus. If you are like me and you like to brute force a solution, then sometimes you will get to the point where your code will actually be too slow to use it. Well, in this case, the easiest thing you can do is to slap the JIT decorator from the number library, and this will try to compile your code and make it a bit faster. So here I have some code that is doing some calculations. Its only purpose is to be slow, and I can time it. And hopefully it will, yeah, it's taking around 4.5 seconds. So then we can install the number, we can import the JIT function. And the only difference here is that we are adding the JIT decorator to our function. And we can time it, and as you can see, we have 0.3 seconds. So that's like an order of magnitude faster. And now our function is actually compiled. So when we run it again, it's like 0.003 seconds. So like insane speed improvement with just one line of code. It's like perfect tool for lazy people like me. Although you might want to fix your algorithm actually. All right, and that's really all I have for you today. I hope what I showed you is not something that you will use only for the advent of code, but also in your daily work. If you want to learn more, I have a blog post with more tips like that, which was actually the precursor of this talk, and this notebook will be available on my website. Thank you.